Today we're going to be talking about people, process, and technology in the 21st century. And I think this is a super interesting conversation and a really nice topic because when we take a look at emerging technology, it's kind of hard to just think about just the technology, right? Because for anyone to adopt it, and here we're talking about enterprise organizations specifically, for enterprise organizations to adopt any sort of technology, it's going to have to impact the people and it's going to have to impact the process. And very often when whenever you were to interact with people, then the process and technology changes, and process, then the people and technology changes, and so on and so forth. And that's exactly what we're trying to demystify a little bit over here with blockchain. So I'm not going to spend any time on this over here. Just wanted to flash our competencies. You can go into our website, check all that information out. I think that the most important thing to note here is that with regards to blockchain, we do like to mention that we are blockchain ledger agnostic, helping our clients pick and choose the right blockchain for their particular type of use case. And also we have a pretty wide technology stack expertise from Microsoft to AWS and Google Cloud and IBM. And really quickly, what it is that we do, we're a full service consultancy and a blockchain system integrator. So we help organizations out from early phase ideation, helping them understand what blockchain is, education. We provide the workshops, blockchain immersions, and the use case analysis, and discovery days, and dashboard in a days, all the way through actual development of the proof of concepts and developing out the UI, the UX, doing solution testing, and supporting solutions once they go live. And we use a variety of cloud technologies like Kubernetes and Docker and infrastructure as code and microservices and integration with line of business applications, which is going to be a really big topic here today. So again, not going to spend too much time on what we do. You can go to our website, www.envisionblockchain.com, and you can see all of our services there. Just wanted to flash this right here. So there's a workshop that we have that's called the Enterprise Blockchain Immersion. It's a half-day blockchain immersion workshop. We're going to assume that everyone that's in this presentation has some sort of understanding of blockchain terminology, right? We're not going to get too technical with it, but we are going to skip the blockchain 101, right? So we do provide sessions over here we spend half a day with your team. We help you understand what blockchain is, what it could do, so on and so forth. So if there's any interest into helping your organization learn about what blockchain is from a 101 perspective, we definitely encourage you to go to our website and register for the session. I guess I just want to give ourselves a tiny plug here from the marketing side. Beginning on September 24th, we're going to start our multi-city roadshow solution showcase. It's called Block Party 2019. These are half-day lunch and learn catered sessions. So as you could see, we're going to 8 different cities. If you happen to be within traveling distance to any of these cities, we definitely do encourage you to register and join. It's an action-packed half day that we have sessions about how it is that you can start to measure what sort of ROI that blockchain can bring in to your specific type of use cases. We're going to take a look at what the horizontal values that blockchain has and how it could really pinpoint a vertical ROI. And then we're also going to be talking about different blockchain trends, kind of how we got to where we are today and what the next phase or the wave of blockchain trends are for 2020 and beyond. So decentralized identity, decentralized finance, stable coins, all of these terminologies that you hear in the news, we're here to help you understand what they are and how you could leverage them. So without further ado, let's get into the topic at hand. So when we think about people, process, and tools, I mean, this is the old mantra from Levitt, right? He had that diamond, and in the diamond there was tasks, there was structure, right? There was people, there was technology, and they kind of put that into three, right? They said, well, tasks and structure, for example, we can probably just call that people, process, and tools. Some people call it people, process, and technology. I think that the most interesting takeaway over here is that whenever any of the levers within an organization is pulled, essentially, once a business is in motion, once you start moving a particular lever, right, and I'm going to refer to these levers throughout the course of this presentation, whenever you move one of the levers, you're naturally going to have to make changes to the people, process, of the technology, right? So when you're dealing with people, these are the people that are actually making things happen, right? So you might have some changes in tasks, so that you have to understand how the tasks are going to be done. Or there might be a change in the process. So if you change in a process, obviously that you're going to have to change the way the job roles are, or maybe what employees do, what their duties and what their responsibilities are. And then obviously, when you make changes also to the process, it's really interesting because we're taking a look at a process in this particular model as it pertains to one specific organization. We're going to talk about the different dimensions that exist with the blockchain technology that we're here to talk about. But essentially, when we're talking about the changes in process, that could also change the relationships and the communication patterns and the way that different management levels coordinate among each other, right? So you have your hierarchy, you have the way that the organization culture is, you have your processes, you have your departments, you have your employees. And whenever there's changes to people or technology, right, the processes are going to change. And likewise, when you make changes to the technology, then you're going to have to make changes to people, right? And you're going to have to make changes to processes. And when we're talking about technology, I mean, it might seem obvious to some and might not be completely obvious to all, but essentially the technology is the component of the organization that you're facilitating, that helping the facilitation of the way that people do what they need to do, or the way that the business needs to do what it needs to do, right? So we're talking about technology, we're talking about computers, we're talking about equipment, you're talking about barcode readers and software applications and all these different, and all these different pieces of the puzzle that when you want to say that you want to implement new barcode scanners, you may need to now implement a new process. You may need to implement new people. You may need to change the way that the people are trained, so on and so forth. So this whole model over here is just basically showing that whenever one lever is pulled, something else has to give, something else has to change. And when I was doing some research in this topic, came across a really interesting website. You can see that the link there is on the lower left-hand corner. And what this is talking about is how you can leverage this people, process, and technology old school methodology. It's been around for a long time, but how you can leverage this to really scale and innovate and automate, right? So we kind of started the first one, so scale. And when we think about scale, this is essentially when people interact with process. And when we take half a step back, we kind of think that there's multiple ways of scale. And for the blockchain enthusiasts that happen to be in this room, we think about scale, like transaction per second, right? Scale is one of the biggest topics which is happening right now on blockchain, and this is where a good majority of the innovation is being geared to right now, is helping blockchain scale in terms of more validator nodes, or greater throughput, or public blockchains are really having these bottlenecks. I'm not approaching this from that particular topic. I'm approaching scale from business scale. So how can we do more with less? And in this article, it does a really good job of basically saying that one person that's armed with a great process can be as impactful as 10 people in a less process-driven organization. So when you take a look at a franchise, for example, they put out this analogy of McDonald's. Basically, McDonald's is able to quickly franchise their restaurants, because they're basically the same process and you can put it up quickly. And from a consumer perspective, they know what to expect, more or less kind of the same thing, right? So we'll talk a little bit on the next series of slides on how blockchain technology really helps kind of set this process in stone so that you know what your process is. And essentially, when you're interacting with this, it should be able to help you scale. Innovation. This is interesting. So the article goes and talks about, so when people interact with technology, we innovate, right? And I think that this is really relevant because you've been, if you've been doing any research around blockchain technology for the past couple years, you hear the constant comparison to the internet, right? It's like when the internet happened, it kind of resembled when blockchain really took main stage in 2015 and up, right? We have these .coms, we have the ICOs, we have the technology behind the World Wide Web, and we have the technology behind blockchain. So when we take a look at the World Wide Web, right, the way that people were using the World Wide Web back then, this article was saying that they basically turned them into brochures. Websites were brochures back in the day. And now look at how we're using the World Wide Web. I mean, I'm here presenting to you live and streaming to an audience in Facebook using the World Wide Web, that we're able to communicate and connect in ways that we've never been able to see before. And essentially, the way that we are, interacting with technology helps us innovate. And at the same time, automate, right? So when process interacts with technology, then we automate. And the article goes and explains a little bit in depth on how, for example, machines operate at a completely different speed than humans. And that's kind of, that's kind of what is meant by automation. But essentially, one of the characteristics of blockchain technology, if you're using a blockchain that allows you to program smart contracts on top of it, that's essentially how we kind of interact with process and automation, and we can deal with different types of innovation. So scale, innovation, and automate, these are going to be themes that we're going to constantly relate back to for the rest of the presentation. Also, I just want to mention that I see that we have a bunch of new participants who just joined the webinar room. If you have any questions, please ask it in the Q&A. Myself, Dan Norkin, and Jason Panzis, we are both monitoring the presentation, and we'll get to the questions as soon as we can. So I know I said I'm not going to get too far into what is blockchain, but just so that we have a stake in the ground, so that we know what we're talking about, you're going to hear me use the same terms interchangeably. I might say ledger, I might say blockchain. I know that there's folks out there that argue that they're different, and I understand where they're coming from. For this particular webinar, I may use the two interchangeably. Just know that what I'm talking about over here is essentially, I'm talking about a decentralized and a distributed ledger where the nodes in the network hold a copy of the ledger. There's theoretically a chain of historical records, and that they're programmed via smart contracts. That's more or less what I'm talking about when I'm talking about a blockchain or a blockchain ledger. Even I could be referring to a distributed ledger technology, a DLT. You might hear me refer to that. Just wanted to say that that's essentially what we're talking about. And some of the values that's offered through blockchain implementation includes immutability of the data and transparency and real-time workflows. And these values, when they're leveraged the right way, provides a brand new level of trust that businesses have not yet been able to see. And we'll explain why in the next couple slides. So we'll get to what a typical blockchain project lifecycle looks like. But I think that this is important to note, right? So we conduct ideation workshops all the time, helping businesses understand what blockchain is, how they could take a look at their own business processes, how they can identify their specific use cases to leverage blockchain. So here's a couple questions to ask, right? So the first one is, what are the problems? Is speed a problem? Then you probably need to automate. Is efficiency a problem? Then you need to scale. Is new value an issue? then you probably need to innovate, right? First question. Second question, what can you do? Right, so there are specific values that blockchain provides that that you can start to extract value when it's leveraged the right way. And what's trending, right? So what's important to think about when you're thinking of a blockchain use case or the values of the technology, it's kind of like we're at the state right now in 2019, and 2019 is incredibly different than where blockchain was in 2018, and likewise in 2017, and so on and so forth, right? So we like to look at the roadmap ahead of us and what's trending and how you can now kind of future-proof whatever it is that you want to implement. Got to have a little bit of slack, right? Because probably from the time I started this webinar to when I'm finishing the webinar, there's already been brand new innovations. That's how quickly blockchain is innovating, or just technology in general, right? Number 4, are there methodologies? So if anyone has read the book Crossing the Chasm, we talk about pragmatists and enthusiasts and early adopters and so on and so forth. So the pragmatists are really who we're trying to convince, right? So the early enthusiasts, they're the ones that want to get behind it. They want to roll up their sleeves, get their hands dirty. But the pragmatists are saying, okay, well, look, I know people, process, and tools. Forget about all this other stuff. Tell me how blockchain interacts with people, process, and tools. Or tell me that there is a proven blockchain framework, or just show me something that's been done before. Give me customer referrals. Give me something, right? So this is what we mean. Are there methodologies in the space that we can lean on? And value drivers. What metrics specific to your business problem provide some level of ROI understanding? And I'm not going to get too deep into this, even though I will scratch the surface of this during this presentation. But if you come to the Block Party presentation, we are going to be talking about how can you actually look at your use case and start to measure ROI. And value stream analysis. This is really what we're going to be focusing on over here for this particular presentation, is what is the impact across your internal and external value streams? And here's what we mean by that. In a previous webinar, we tackled the question, where is the strategic business value of blockchain? And this is kind of the end slide of the entire presentation. The way to read this goes like this, right? You read from left to right. First, you start by picking your vertical. What vertical are you in? And in the top middle, we refer to Michael Porter's competitive advantage. So where are you as an organization? Are you a cost leader, or are you focused on differentiation? Basically the difference between Walmart and Apple, or up and up versus the iPhone, right? We're talking about products. Next, we start to take a look at the value chain. So literally, as you're sitting here looking at this slide, think about where are you in your value chain? Are you part of the HR? Are you part of the firm infrastructure? Are you part of the inbound logistics? Are you part of the service? Are you part of the production? Right? Doesn't matter what industry that you're at, you have all these components, whether you're in finance or you're in telecom or you're in supply chain of transportation, something along those lines. And on the bottom, we help by saying, well, there's basically 2 major components over here. You can either do blockchain for record keeping or transactions, right? So we like to think about this. But here we're talking about value chains. And this is what we mean by your value chain. Again, a Michael Porter topic. And when we talk about value chain, right, now when we get into blockchain, we start thinking about what's the business among external value chains, right? So now you've identified your own internal value chain, and right, we're going to get to the people, process, technology in a second. But as you start to think about this, right, think about this. You have company A, which is in yellow. This is your value chain. You have company B, which is in red. And you have company C, which is in blue. And the way that you guys do business among each other, you probably have the marketing and sales and a service department reaching out to the marketing and sales department of another company, which is then probably sending messages from production to the outbound logistics. And this is just a completely generic use case. You can kind of picture probably somewhere around a supply chain, right? Outbound logistics. And then from the outbound logistics and the production, it needs to communicate to company one's inbound logistics. Then you probably have the same production and outbound logistics then coordinating some sort of effort to the marketing and sales. Also needs to coordinate back to company B to the production, and then probably company B needs to get back to company 1 over there from the service over there to the other service department, right? So here you start to think about, now if this is your current business process, think about what are your problems, right? Is there some sort of speed issue over here? Is it taking a long time to send a message, right? Are you sending emails? Are you sending spreadsheets? Is it taking you a long time to send the spreadsheets because you need to reconcile some sort of information, right? Is there a lack of inefficiency? Do you need to scale? Or is all this good, but you just need to generate new value somewhere, right? And this is what we mean by value stream analysis. So what's the impact across your internal and external value streams? So this is pre-blockchain, right? This is the way that your business process currently is. So then we're going to bring a new concept into this, and you probably saw this in our previous webinars. We talk about decentralized applications. When we get the decentralized apps, now you can see this is the infrastructure, the architecture, the IT systems, ERP systems, yellow is company A, etc. But all of them are leveraging one blockchain in the middle. And this is where we get to decentralized application and value chains, right? So the same process is happening, but now what you have is now you're using this blockchain ledger to keep certain information so that all the different network participants can use the same particular pieces of metadata for what they need to use it for. And things can even get even more interesting when you need another party to join. We call them the purple party over here, like a regulator that needs to audit everything that's happening, right? So they need the all-seeing eye, for example. So we get into our use case before and after, and we start to ask the question, so what can blockchain do? Specific values are provided when leveraging blockchain technology, and we have our value drivers. So what metrics specific to your business problem provide some level of ROI understanding, right? So when we have the before, we had manual processes, we had limited visibility, we had a lack of accountability, and possibly you're sending, scans or paperwork, or you're mailing something, it's not fully digitalized. By using the blockchain ledger, you have over here process automation, you have transparency, you have track and trace and auditability, and physical object digital representations, like the fingerprints, the hashing is what they call. So, we had a lot of emails that was asking in reply to our email saying, what would you like to see? And there was a lot of questions around use case examples. So again, we're not going to get into what your specific use case is or how you can figure it out. Again, if you look at the top right, we have our blockchain discovery day. We have our immersion workshop that we recommend everyone to go ahead sign up for. But essentially, this was a survey that was put out by Accenture and the World Economic Forum. You could see the first column that there's certain values that you can get from blockchain, and a lot of advantages across many different industries, from banking to energy to healthcare and utility, so on and so forth, right? So again, we're gonna record this and put this up for on-demand viewing if you want to get back to the slide. But use cases are found in every industry. So here now we're going to talk back on people, process, and technology across a blockchain network. And again, we showed you these levers, the people, processing, technology. Remember, when one thing moves, the other thing moves. But this is only looking at a current organization. Remember, in what is a blockchain, you have multiple participants and you have different copies of nodes that hold the information across the different participants. So essentially, what we're looking at is we're looking at a model like this, right? Where we're seeing people, process, and technology across a blockchain network, right? When your business networks are coming together, they could be competitors, they could be suppliers and buyers, there could be customers, they could be, business network participants is what we call them, right? Your ecosystem. And essentially, this is where we need to start to take a look at how are people, process, and technologies going to impact our blockchain network. So external organizations, not just for one. This is a different model, right? We're not looking at one dimension, we're looking at multi-dimensional now changing. So again, I was saying that here's the typical phases of a blockchain project, right? We typically start at the beginning We're doing ideation and business case ROI identification. They could be in separate workshops. They could be ongoing workshops. We're just speaking at a very high level. Once you've identified what sort of ROI could be, then you move forward with the proof of concept, the POC they call it, where the proof of concept is where now you start to actually build something, right? You have some sort of demo where now you can start to begin to prove the ROI. And when you start to prove the ROI, you might need to now bring on additional, participants. You may want to now start transacting a subset of business information. It doesn't need to be just demo information. We move that into the pilot. And then once the pilot proves out well, then we move out to MVP 1, 2, etc. And that's what we call the production, right? So now we're using the solution that could incorporate existing legacy technology and just adding blockchain on top of that. Doesn't have to replace everything. We'll get to that next. And then that's what we mean by, the production launch. So when we talk about the next couple slides, the people, process, and technology, I'm not specifying which phase of the project these particular levers are in, but we're just saying in general, they could happen at any of these different phases. Right, so the next couple of slides is essentially going to sum it all up over here. So these levers that we keep talking about, how the levers may change during blockchain adoption, during adoption of blockchain technology. So here we have people, right? So when we're implementing this sort of new technology, obviously you have to identify and involve different stakeholders. And now we're talking about external businesses. Now we need to start thinking about your network participants. And then not just the participants, but also who are going to be the end users that are going to be leveraging the solution. You may not have the internal capacity or the skill sets for that. So then you're starting to see that there's a lot of partnerships with startup organizations like Envision Blockchain that focus on this specific blockchain technology to kind of partner with organizations like us and bring that into your organization to help you kind of get to a new level of maturity or to help you implement something like this. You might decide that you want to do this internally. So there needs to be continuous internal training of new technologies and skill sets. You may need to provide new training for new applications such as, Ether DID, which is the decentral identity management tool sets. You may have new web apps that come with the solutions, et cetera. So you got to learn how to use them. There's also, you have to learn new processes. Also really important is that now, more than ever, especially when deciding use cases, the business participants, the business stakeholders need to have a greater participant in the use case identification to lead IT. IT, however, needs to remain forward thinking and provide the kind of lenience to implementation as the technology roadmap is constantly changing, right? So again, we need to lead by business, not just the technology. The technology does nothing unless it proves out some sort of ROI. And unfortunately or fortunately, people could be eliminated or reallocated due to efforts of automation. When we're talking about process, we talk about that first and foremost, you need to develop a change management plan for implementing new technology. This happens anyway. But like a project management office, a PMO, organizations are now standing up a blockchain management office to manage all of this ideation and technology, learning, and training, and so on and so forth. I know that we're running up to time, but we just have one more slide over here. You need to develop an implementation plan that revolves around a process. There's a continuous use case discussions along with a resurgence of business process identification analysis. So this is kind of looking at your business process before and then looking at it after. There's also cross-functional teaming. So once you start bringing in your ecosystem, right, your minimum viable ecosystem to start, now you need to start to now collaborate with external organizations. So now you're moving from a single dimension of process change to multi-dimensional model. When we're talking about smart contracts provide process governance. It sets the process in stone in the immutable ledger that if it doesn't match that process, transactions are not going to happen. And then, of course, you have a consortium governance documentation, which basically outlines what exactly the process is all about, what the technology means, who can make what changes, when the changes can make, so on and so forth. Last but not least, we have technology. So depending on the use case and the system architecture, existing systems can still be kept intact. They may slightly be modified, or they may be entirely replaced if that's part of the organizational digital transformation strategy, right? You might need to bring in new components in order to get to where you need to be. The blockchain ledger selection and developing the smart contracts, that's a piece of technology. You got to understand what the different ledgers do and what the smart contracts do. And then, of course, you have to set up the right tooling for source code repositories, for the different environments, production and sandbox. And you have different tooling for dealing with different DevOps methodologies, so on and so forth. We have technology which is evolving so quickly that it pivots. So, the fact that technology is going to change so much, that also needs to be part of this technology culture. So there's a bit of a lenience to be able to iterate quickly. And of course, last but not least, the benefits of decentralization occurs through what is known as the minimum viable ecosystem, MVE, or network effect. The more network participants you have, which are nodes or validators, depending on which ledger that you have, or peers, right? Ordering services, there's all sorts of different terminology. The more that you have, the more decentralized your solution becomes, which then the greater value comes from that. So what's next? If you're unfamiliar with any of the terminology that we were talking about here today, we really encourage everyone to take our Blockchain 101 and use case workshops. We recommend before you start developing anything, let's sit down, let's do a business process identification before and after so we can help you identify what sort of ROI could come, help you measure certain metrics and develop out a business case, and then have to start building, right? So then you start developing your end-to-end solution, which could include smart contracts, user interfaces, and user experiences and integrations, and et cetera. So please reply back to me or send us an email at info@envisionblockchain.com or visit us at www.envisionblockchain.com. We would definitely love to have a further conversation and answer any questions.